Hello students, welcome to Saraswati PU College Kumta. My name is Vinay, I am a physics lecturer. Before I worked in Excel Academics in Bangalore where I used to teach NEET and JEE for the students. Now I'm going to take the classes from Saraswati PU College. So today I'm going to discuss about a topic that is units and dimensions. This units and dimensions, which is one of the boring chapter, but it is very important chapter. So before I am going to start with the units and dimensions, first I would like to explain what is physics with small examples. Okay. For example, in your daily life you can observe few things or you can see few things. I'll explain a few things. For example, I'll take this as a bicycle. For example, take this bicycle. If the bicycle is at rest or if this cycle is at rest, then it will fall and it won't be balanced. But if the same bicycle is in motion, it will be balanced and it won't fall on any one side. And similarly, we can observe some more phenomena. For example, I will drop a body from the top of a building. Here I will drop a body from the top of a building. If you drop a body from the top of the full building, it will fall freely under gravity, but it won't move in upward direction. For example, throw a body in upward direction. Even though you throw the body in upward direction, finally again it reaches to the ground. Okay, so even though you throw this body in upward direction, again it will finally touches the ground. So this you can observe. So like that, you can observe few more things like, for example, an apple falling from the tree or falling down from the tree. And you can see sunrise and sunset. Sunrise or sunset. So these are all the things which you can observe in our daily life. We can observe all these things in your daily life. Okay, the things which you can observe in your daily life can be explained based on the physics. So physics is one of the most interesting concepts. For example, all these things you know, it's all the things are easy. So even a kid knows if the cycle is at rest, so it will fall down. Therefore, we have to use the stand. If it is in motion, you need not to use the stand. Okay, even a small kid will also know if you throw a ball or an object in upward direction, what will happen? It will fall on the ground. So all these things will be known. It will be easy and it is interesting, but at the same time it is difficult. Now to explain all these phenomena, we can use the laws in physics. You can use the laws in physics. Now, what do you mean by physics? Means physics is nothing but study of all these natural phenomena in the universe. So what do you mean by physics? Means physics is nothing but the study of all these natural phenomena in the universe. For example, a ball will freely fall under the gravity of Earth, but the same Earth is moving around the Sun without falling anywhere. Clear? So Earth is moving around the Sun. Right, so Earth can't be fall down and it won't move up. So it is moving under the gravity of Sun. So all these things we can explain based on the laws of physics. So what do you mean by physics? Means physics is nothing but the study of nature in the universe, or the study of all the natural phenomena in the universe. Okay, so today I am going to start the concept that is units and dimensions. In those units and dimensions, I am going to teach you the topics, that is units, or what is a unit and what are the units, and next one physical quantities and its types, and next one measurements, and next we'll discuss with the topics errors in measurements, and then we'll discuss with the topic significant figures. So these are the topics which we are going to discuss in this units and dimensions. So first I'll start the concept with the concept that is unit. Unit. Okay. For example, if I ask you a question, what is your height? For example, I'll say my height as 6 feet. For example, I'll ask a person, what is your weight? For example, he told his weight as, for example, 55 kg. Now I'll ask a person, how much distance is from your school to college or college to home? Then he told that 10 kilometers. Okay, now how much time it will take to reach from your school to college? For example, 1 hour. Now, in all these physical quantities, so what is your height? It is a physical quantity which can be measured. So your height can be measured. And what is your weight? 55 kg, that can be measured. And what is the distance? That is 10 kilometers, that can be measured. So all these measurable quantities are called as physical quantities. Clear? So all these quantities which can be measured, that can be called as physical quantities. So the quantities which we can measure, that can be called as physical quantities. Now in all these physical quantities, we are using an extra thing to express about that physical quantity. So to express this physical quantity, we are using a notation or we are using a parameter. This is called as unit. Clear? This is called as unit. So what do you mean by unit? Means unit is a physical quantity, or the unit of a physical quantity is defined as the standard reference to measure it. Clear? So a unit of a physical quantity is the standard reference to measure it. For example, I will ask the question, what is your height? Clear? What is your height? So what is your height? Height is the measurable quantity. So this is a physical quantity. So this physical quantity can be measured. Clear? This physical quantity can be measured. Now the answer is, for example, my height is 1.8 meter. So my height is 1.8 meter. Now the height is measured like this. So it is a measurable quantity, therefore height is a physical quantity. In this physical quantity, this physical quantity is expressed based on the standard reference. What is that standard reference? Means meter. Okay, now the standard reference which is used to describe the physical quantity, that is called as a unit. Similarly, I can say my height as, for example, 6 feet. Now, feet is the standard reference which is used to express my physical quantity, that is height. So, what do you mean by unit? Means a unit is nothing but a standard reference used to measure. Clear? Now, what do you mean by unit? Means the unit of a physical quantity. The unit of a physical quantity is the standard reference used to measure. Clear? Is used to measure. Now, for example, we have to use an appropriate units for the appropriate physical quantities. For example, if I ask what is your height, you have to say your height in meter or feet or centimeter like that. If I ask your height, you can't say my height as 6 kg. So height never be measured in kg. So we have to use an appropriate unit for the appropriate physical quantity. So height is a physical quantity that can be measured in either centimeter or meter or kilometer or all these things. Now weight is the quantity which can be measured in kg or grams or else milligrams like that. I hope you understood. So therefore, we have to use an appropriate physical quantity for that particular quantity or particular physical quantity. So we have used an appropriate unit for the physical quantity. For example, if you went to a shop and you ask, please give me 1 liter of rice, it doesn't give the meaning. It doesn't give the meaning. So here we have to use the 1 kg of rice. So the unit has to be perfect. Describe or perfectly describe that physical quantity. And we can't say, please give me 1 kg of petrol. So this is also wrong. Therefore, for which physical quantities we have to use which units, that is also important. Okay. Now listen, the measurement of a physical quantity is done in 2 ways. Clear? Now the measurement of physical quantity can be done in 2 ways. For example, I will take the same example, that is 6 feet. So 6 feet is the measurement of my height. Clear? 6 feet is the measurement of my height, let us say. Now this 6 feet is nothing but 6 into, I will take 1 feet as the standard reference. If I take 1 feet as the standard reference, I have to multiply with 6 times to get my height. So therefore, here the measurement can be done in 2 ways. What is that? Means what is the unit we are going to consider? And how many times we have to multiply this unit? Right? For example, the distance from Delhi to Bangalore, clear, or else the distance from Bangalore to Punta. Clear, Bangalore to Punta, let us say it is 460 kilometers. Now what is the unit we use? Means the unit we use is kilometer. Therefore you have to multiply 460 times of that 1 kilometer. So if you multiply 460 times of 1 kilometer, you will get the distance from Bangalore to Punta. That is nothing but a measurable quantity, which is called as a physical quantity. Therefore, here the measurement of a physical quantity can be done in 2 ways. That is, one is the number of times the unit is going to multiply. Are you clear? Now, I'll write this point. The measurement of a physical quantity, the measurement of a physical quantity can be done in 2 ways. In the, what is the first way means? The first part gives how many times the standard unit is multiplied. Clear? So the first part gives how many times the standard reference is multiplied. Clear? So how many times the standard reference is to be multiplied. And the second part, name of the unit. For example, I will take the unit as feet. So this is the standard reference. So how many times the standard reference is multiplied? Are you clear? So the unit I will consider as u, and the number of times I multiplied I will take it as n. So n is nothing but the number of times a unit is multiplied, and u is the name of the unit. So if you multiply number of times into the unit, it will use the physical quantity. Clear? Or measurement of a quantity. Clear? Now remember, the magnitude of physical quantity can be expressed as the product of number as well as unit. For example, you take 55 kg. So 55 is a number, kg is the unit. So product of number of times and unit. For example, 460 kilometers, this is number and this is unit. Here also 1.8 meter, this is number, unit is meter. So here we can express like this. So we can express like this. The magnitude of physical quantity, the the magnitude of physical quantity is the product of is the product of okay, unit as well as the number of times it has to be multiplied, is the product of unit and the number of times that standard reference contained in the quantity, or the number of times the unit contained in the quantity. So I can take like this: the unit is taken as u and the number of times multiplied I will take it as n. Therefore the magnitude of physical quantity, okay, the magnitude of physical quantity is equal to the product of number of times and the unit contained in the physical quantity. So this is the magnitude of physical quantity. So this is the magnitude of physical quantity. So we can say that the product of number of times of the physical quantity multiplied by the unit is equal to constant. Clear? So this relation can be used to solve problems from the competitive exams. So this unit can be, or this formula can be used to solve problems from competitive exams. Okay, fine. I'll give an example for this unit or measurable quantity, that is a physical quantity. For example, length of the wire is equal to 5 meter. Now length of the wire is a measurable quantity. That measurable quantity is called as physical quantity, and here 5 is the how many times we have to multiply, or how many number of times we have to multiply, and meter is the unit. So meter is the unit and this is the number of times that unit has to be repeated. So we can say like this: so 5 into 1 meter. So the unit 1 meter is repeated or reproducible or reused for 5 times. So take 1 meter, reuse this 1 meter for 5 times, then it will use the length of this wire. Okay, for example, I will draw one line like this and I will ask what is the length of this line. Then what you will do means take a scale of 30 centimeter. So you will calculate from here to here and then you will reproduce or reuse to measure the remaining height. Okay, for example, if you take a centimeter scale, that centimeter scale, for example, we have to reuse the centimeter scale again, so we have to reuse and reproduce to find out the length of this wire. Now I am going to discuss about the characteristics of the unit. So now I am going to discuss about the characteristics of a unit. So now I am going to discuss about the characteristics of unit. So the first characteristics of the unit is the unit is well defined. The unit is well defined. So as you know, what do you mean by well defined means? So particularly you have to define. For example, I will take meter. So you have to define what is the length of meter. Okay, for example, I will use kilometer. So what is the length of 1 kilometer? Okay, what is the distance or what is the length of that 1 kilometer? So this unit must be a well defined. Clear? Unit must be a well defined parameter. Later we will define what is a meter. Clear? Later we will define what is a meter. Later we will define what is 1 kg. So later we will define all these quantities. Okay, so what do you mean by meter, what do you mean by a kg, all these things later we will define. Therefore a unit must be a well defined. Clear? A unit must be a well defined. Now the next characteristics is the unit must be imperishable, which means that it has to last long forever. Clear? It has to last long forever. And the third one, we already discussed that the unit must be reproducible. The unit must be reproducible, which means that we can reuse the unit. So in the previous examples we discussed, that is for example I will take 5 meter, that is 5 into 1 meter. So we have to multiply meter with 5 times to get the physical quantity. So to get this physical quantity you have to multiply the meter with 5 times, then you will get this physical quantity. So we are reproducing or reusing that unit, that is meter. And the next one is the unit should not be too small or too large to measure the physical quantity. Clear? So we have to use appropriate unit. Clear? We have to use appropriate unit. For example, I take height of a person. Clear? I take height of a person. Let us say height of a person is 1.8 meter. Clear? I take the height of a person as 1.8 meter. For example, I can take like this also 180 centimeter, or else I can take like this also 180 or 1800 millimeters, or else I can take like this also, for example 0.0018 kilometer. So if you take kilometer, the value is very small. If you take millimeter, the value is very large. So you have to choose the unit such that it doesn't be too small, it doesn't be too large. We have to use an appropriate unit. So if you use 1.8 meter in this case, then it is not too large or it is not too small. I hope you understood. And the next characteristics for the unit is the unit doesn't changes. The unit doesn't changes with respect to time or physical conditions like temperature or pressure. So the unit doesn't changes with respect to time or physical conditions like temperature and pressure or pressure. So these are the characteristics for a unit. Clear? These are the characteristics for a unit. Okay. Now we are going to discuss about a physical quantity. Clear? Now we are going to discuss about physical quantity. So what do you mean by physical quantity? Means the quantity which we can measure, that is called as a physical quantity. So the quantities which we can measure, is called as or are called as physical quantities. Okay, Okay, just now we discussed in the previous concept only we discussed the examples. So for example, what is your weight, what is your height, what is the distance between A to B, and what is the time and how much time we have to take to move from A to B. So all these things we discussed, all these things are the measurable quantities. That measurable quantities are called as physical quantities. Now remember, these physical quantities, these physical quantities are classified into two types. So one is fundamental physical quantity. So one is fundamental physical quantities, and the other one is derived physical quantities. Now anything which we can measure, that is called as a physical quantity. Just now we discussed in the previous example what is your height, what is your weight. Okay, so how much time it will take to reach from one place to another place. All these are the measurable quantities. That measurable quantities are called as physical quantities. Now these physical quantities again further classified into two types. What are those means? Fundamental physical quantities, this is first one, and next one derived physical quantities. Now we are going to discuss about what is a fundamental physical quantity and what is a derived physical quantity. Yeah. Now what do you mean by a fundamental physical quantity means? These quantities are independent of any other parameters. It doesn't depend on any other things. Okay, if you take fundamental physical quantities doesn't depend on any other parameters. If you take derived physical quantities depends on the other parameters. That parameters are fundamental physical quantities. So what do you mean by fundamental physical quantities means these quantities are independent of any other quantities. It doesn't depend on any other parameters. So first I am going to discuss about the fundamental physical quantities. So what do you mean by fundamental physical quantities means the physical quantities which are independent of any other quantity, or it doesn't depend on any other quantities. It doesn't depend on any other quantities. So that quantities are called as fundamental physical quantities. Examples for this fundamental physical quantities are length, which is measured in meter if you take SI system of unit. So we'll discuss that measurements later. Mass and time. So length and mass and time are the physical quantities which doesn't depend on any other quantities. Clear? Or the physical quantities which are independent of any other physical quantities. That is called as a fundamental physical quantity. Now the second one, derived physical quantities. Derived physical quantities. So what are the derived physical quantities means? The physical quantities which depends on fundamental physical quantities, that is called as derived physical quantities. So the physical quantities which depends on fundamental physical quantities. Fundamental physical quantities. Those are called as derived physical quantities. Example for the derived physical quantities, for example, speed. Now, you know what do you mean by speed means? Speed is nothing but distance by time. So, speed depends on the distance covered and the time taken. So speed is a dependent quantity. Now velocity. So velocity is defined as displacement by time. So velocity depends on displacement, velocity depends on time. So speed, velocity and acceleration. So what do you mean by acceleration means? Acceleration is equal to velocity by time. So acceleration depends on velocity, acceleration depends on time, therefore it is also a derived quantity. And for example, force. So what do you mean by force means? Force is nothing but the product of mass and acceleration. Up to your standard is correct, later we modify the definition. So force is taken as product of mass and acceleration. So force depends on mass, force depends on acceleration. Clear? Similarly, work. So what do you mean by work means? Work can be taken as force multiplied by distance. So work depends on force, work depends on distance. Now all these quantities are derived quantities. Clear? So all these quantities are derived quantities. Now in the next class we will discuss about the systems of units. Clear? System of units. Thank you.